That's it for this episode of O's Across the Pond, bringing Birdland to Europe one episode at a time. Be sure to subscribe, share and follow along as we keep the Orioles conversation going from this side of the Atlantic. Until next time, stay loud, stay proud and let's go O's!
Hello and welcome to O's Across the Pond. Today we have the usual suspects, Thomas, hello.
Evening.
And Matt.
Hello.
And we are also very blessed to be joined by a special guest, Michael Marcantonini, who is the Aberdeen Ironbirds play-by-play commentator. Hello, Michael.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for taking the time. So what we'll do is we'll each take it in turn. We'll ask you a question, Michael, see where the conversation goes, and some of us might jump in with some follow-ups or other questions about your kind of job commentating with the Ironbirds and your kind of views on the players and the game and how that has developed. So just start off with what led you into the world of play-by-play commentary for baseball, and how did you get into the Ironbirds broadcast?
I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to get into sports broadcasting. I didn't necessarily know right away that I wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster, but I went to a sports broadcasting camp when I was a kid, like early middle school years, and from there I just continued to build the interest and passion for it. And then I'd say probably when I was in high school is when I first got the itch to do play-by-play broadcasting. That's when I first did my first play-by-play broadcast for some of the games at my high school. And then in college, I experimented with a bunch of different aspects of sports broadcasting. I did a lot of sports talk radio show hosting. I also did some on-camera TV show stuff, like debate-style shows. I worked for the athletic department doing everything from like social media work to production stuff. But once I called my first game play-by-play at Penn State when I was in college, that's kind of when I was really hooked on doing that. I just love the atmosphere of being at a ballpark in a broadcast booth, reacting to what happens live out on a field. I love the fact that play-by-play, you can have as many notes as you want in front of you, and that's going to make you a better broadcaster. But what happens out on the field or the court or whatever playing surface, like you can't script that. So you have to just react to what happens, and that's what excites me. I love the feel of being at a ballpark or a field or a stadium, anything like that. And really, so I'd say like high school is when I really started to do a little play-by-play, but college is where I really figured out that this is what I wanted to do.
And am I right in saying, Michael, when you're commentating for the Ironbirds, are you commentating for a radio and a TV broadcast, or is that a kind of dynamic that you're thinking about while you're commentating?
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about that. So in Aberdeen, it's basically a simulcast. So we've got a TV audience and an audio only, a radio audience.
Yeah.
So I've got to kind of be mindful of both sides. Now, a lot of times I'll have guests on my broadcasts in Aberdeen, and we'll have a back and forth convo going. I'll be asking them some interview type questions, and a lot of times that kind of caters more towards the TV audience. But then I'll also try to be more descriptive at certain points in games, make sure I'm saying the inning and score more often, and describing things that, of course, the audio-only audience can't see. So I definitely do a mix of both and try to make sure both audiences, the TV and radio audiences, are enjoying the broadcast and getting a lot out of it.
That's quite a skill, I'm sure.
Being in the booth, and because a lot of it, as you say, you can make notes for that. You can make as many notes as you want, but you can't predict what is going to happen at any point, play-by-play. So obviously having the passion for the sport and the team that you're covering will help that, and the knowledge. Saying that, what teams have you supported that you would want to be an announcer for, or who would be the dream that you could announce for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about that a lot over the years, and there's never been one specific team that I said like, oh, 100%, like this is number one for me, and it's always going to be that way. I'm from the Philadelphia area, so if I could be the voice of the Philadelphia Phillies someday, I mean that would definitely be a dream come true. One, to work in the major leagues, but do it for my hometown team, the team that I grew up cheering for. So that's definitely one. If I could eventually call games in the big leagues for the Orioles, I think that would be really special because I've been with the Orioles organization since 2022, calling games for the Ironbirds. And I feel like I've really grown up as a broadcaster in the last 3+ years with the Ironbirds. I've learned a lot. I've gotten better, and I've learned how to command a broadcast and use my voice, to really like use it as a platform, not just calling games where like, I can make a difference with my voice on my platform. So that would be cool to get to Baltimore someday and kind of have like a full circle thing there. But really, any team that wants to take me, you know what I'm saying? Like any big league team that is willing to pay me to broadcast their games, like I'm in. It doesn't matter when or where I'm going. But I think Phillies and Orioles would definitely be towards the top. And any team that's in a warm weather city near a beach, I'd also be in on that too.
I take it baseball is your big passion then?
Yeah, baseball, it's always been my number one ever since I started playing when I was a kid, really young, and then just continuing to play over the years. It's always been my number one for playing, watching, broadcasting, and it's always going to be that way.
What position did you play?
I played catcher for most of my baseball career. That was always my main position, and I also played a little bit of outfield when I wasn't catching. But I tell people all the time, and I really think it's true, but playing catcher for so many years during my baseball career, it has definitely helped me as a broadcaster because the catcher sees everything that happens out on the field. He's the only one that's looking out versus in on the diamond, and you're involved in every play. There's so much that goes into that position. So I think because I've played that position for so many years in baseball, I understand the game better, and I also see the game a little bit differently as a fan and a broadcaster, which has helped me as a broadcaster.
Yep.
Can you hit lefty pitching? If so, there might be a spot up at Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that 95 plus velocity might have me done for it. But if they want to offer me a spot, I'm in. I always tell people too, like broadcasting is incredible, and it's definitely a dream that I get to do this for a career. But the one thing that I would 100% rather be doing is playing professional baseball instead of broadcasting it. Like that's the dream for a lot of people. But if anyone needs me for some at bats, I'm ready.
Brilliant. So just sort of moving into it further into the sort of sports broadcasting, are there any sort of announcers or people that were sort of influential when you were younger that you looked up to in that world?
There are a lot. The one that I always start with is talking about Harry Kalas, the legendary voice of the Phillies. I mean, for so many years and decades. And he passed away in 2009 when I was in 8th grade. But for up until that point, he was the voice of the Phillies. Everybody associated Phillies baseball with him. They associated him with Phillies baseball and his signature home run calls and all of that. So he was definitely an influence on me from a distance, just listening to his broadcasts and how iconic he was. So that's a big one for me. I also am a huge fan of Matt Vasgersian with MLB Network. For so many years, he was calling minor league games, then started calling big league games, and then he was doing a lot of national games with MLB Network and ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. He's always been a guy that I've loved a lot. I think we have similar styles, the way we call a game. Like I've definitely tried to take away some things from the way he broadcasts the game, not be him and try to replicate everything, but just listening to how he calls a game. I like the flow of it. I like the energy. I like his conversational style. But he's always been one of my favorites. And then there's just so many across baseball. I mean, I've had the pleasure of getting to know a bunch of different big league play-by-play broadcasters and also broadcasters in other sports that I've learned from just watching or listening to them broadcast a game. And one of those guys, Kevin Brown with the Orioles. I mean, I think he does an incredible job. I've had a chance to connect to Kevin the last few years, and he's been a great mentor and resource for me. But there's so many different ones out there. But those are ones, in different ways have had a big influence on me.
Yeah, I think from Kevin's point of view, it's so obvious that he gets along really well with Ben McDonald and Jim Palmer, and that he really enjoys it. You can tell, and I think that comes across in his commentary and yourself as well. The clips that I've heard. So give us a kind of behind the scenes look at what a typical game day for you would be if you're commentating in Aberdeen. Then, so you're driving down there.
Yeah, so with Aberdeen, it's a pretty standard game day routine. Like I don't stray too far from the routine for our home games. We've got usually a 6 game home series, play Tuesday through Sunday. The Tuesday through Saturday games all start at 7:05. The Sunday games start at 2:05 local time. So for those 5 night games in a row, I'll usually get to the ballpark somewhere between like 2:30 and 3 o'clock. It's not too early of a start, which is good because we're working late nights often, and it's a lot of games in a row. So I'll start the day around 2:33. We always have a quick staff meeting at 3 o'clock, and then from there I'll dive into updating my game notes, which I update every day based off what the team did the day before, just keeping track of stats and trends and certain things that I want to be able to have in front of me when I call games. So I'll get that out of the way. I'll spend some time maybe writing up some questions for an interview that I'm about to go grab a guy for. Maybe I'll edit an interview that's already done. And then I'll usually spend most of the time between 4 and 5 down on the field during batting practice, talking to guys, maybe grabbing an interview. I usually play an interview every pregame show before the broadcast, unless I have a guest on, and then I'll just kind of have them, talk back and forth with me. So after BP, though, it's more so about getting ready for that night's game, where I'm going to fill out my scorebook, get the lineups in there, info about the pitching matchup, and some of the guys that are in the lineup, and of course just notes on the team that I want in front of me during the broadcast. And then I'll also take some more time to get an interview ready to play on the broadcast, or plan out something else that I want to do during the broadcast. And then between 6 and 7, I usually get my dinner in around 6 o'clock because want to make sure I'm fueled up for the broadcast. 6:30 I go down to the field again, and I do an on-camera pregame show that they throw up on the scoreboard in the ballpark, and they also put me over the PA system in the stadium so you can hear my voice and my co-host's voice on the pregame show. So we do that for about a 5-minute show, come back up. By that point, I've probably got a 5 to 10 minute break in between going on air again, and then I start my broadcast pregame show at about 6:55, 10 minutes before first pitch, and I'll either play an interview for 5 minutes or talk to my guest that I have on. Then after the national anthem, I'll get the starting lineups and the pitching matchup out there, and then the game starts at 7:05. I'll call the game, 2.5, 3 hours on air doing my thing, and then I wrap it up, quick post-game show. I'm usually out of there within a half hour after the game ends, and then just kind of repeat it all the next day, and then just for the day games on Sundays, a little bit more of a condensed version of that.
That is a long day, but a cool day.
They go by quick. They are full days. Yeah. They go by quick, but they definitely add up.
With the amount of work and prep that you put in there day to day to get ready for a broadcast, and obviously like preparing to interview people and guests, what would you say is the most misunderstood part or the most underappreciated part of working in minor league baseball from a media perspective?
Oh, that's a really good question. Talking about like underappreciated parts of the prep and calling the game. Yeah, I think for me, I'm not saying I personally get misunderstood with it, but I think the way that I hear from fans or whatever, I think one of the things that's underappreciated or maybe just not known about is like how much time we actually spend, having the stats and the notes and the stories in front of us. And a lot of times the work that we put in, like sometimes we're not even on the clock for that. You know what I mean? Like you're working a job, but to be the best and be as good as, I want to be and other people in this industry want to be, like, we know we've kind of got to do some stuff on our own, away from the ballpark, on our own time, to get information that we want to throw out on the broadcast and also become better broadcasters. So I don't think a lot of people necessarily know that. I know people know that we put in work and we work hard and we get appreciated for it, but I don't think people know the extent of how much time goes into it. Also, I think it's definitely a misconception of like how much we get paid. Like minor league baseball broadcasters just don't make a lot of money. It varies from team to team and organization to organization, but it's not a position in general where you're making that substantial of a living. A lot of us work other jobs throughout the off season or even during the season, depending on what your role is with the team. Like I'm not full time with the Ironbirds, essentially like full time for game day staff, where I'm coming in every home game and doing my work start to finish for the full day. But like I work side jobs. I do freelance broadcasting with in other areas like college sports, traveling to different cities to do that. I don't think as many people know that how much of a grind it is to kind of piece together a living at the level of calling games in the minor leagues, because it's just not that high paying of a job. So I think that's important to like provide people with that context. Like people always say how cool it is what I do, and it's true. Like I love my job, I love doing it, and it's awesome. But then sometimes I'll tell people like, yeah, I mean, like you don't know kind of what goes on, like how tough this is to make it and keep going with it. So that's definitely something that's a little misunderstood.
Yeah, I kind of setting up this podcast and trying to make it grow and constantly, trying to get guests on and do the research, and it is a grind. And people say to you like, how are you getting on with this? And I'm like, this is just the start of the journey. Like we've got stuff that we're trying to plan for the future. Try obviously grow the podcast, but also grow like the word of the Orioles in the UK and in Europe. And a lot of people don't see that the work that everyone puts in. And I think no matter what it is in life, like yourself, you've got to be willing to put in some work, like either before work or after work. Put your own money into something if you want to make it work. Because a lot of things in life don't pay for free, but eventually, they can become beneficial in more ways than one. Like I think the benefit we all get out of this is discussing our passion of baseball, and creating a community, not necessarily a financial kind of reward from it, but we know that can come in the future. Like yourself, you've chosen to be a broadcaster. You're passionate about this. You know where you want to go, and you know the journey that you've got to do to make that. And a lot of people don't see that, apart from probably like close friends and family.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I mean, you guys know with doing this podcast, like if you put out an hour podcast, like that's not just 1 hour of work. That's a bunch of different hours of work, because you're going to prep for the broadcast, or you're going to prep for the podcast. You're going to then take the time to record it, and then you go edit it and post it on social media. Like it's maybe 5 or 6 hours, give or take, a couple here and there. But for every 3 hour broadcast I do, it's not just 3 hours of work.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So moving on to the Ironbirds and where they sit in the Orioles and the farm system, how exciting is it to see those players come through, and those that are going to make it all the way to the very top? That must be a really cool part of the job.
It really is. It's definitely a big thrill. I try not to take that part for granted, because I think back to the 2023 season, and I think I did a really good job in the moment appreciating what I was seeing in front of me every night. That team that we had in Aberdeen in 2023 was absolutely loaded. We didn't make the playoffs that year, but I think with the talent we had from the start of the season through the end, and how many good players we had and how many guys we moved up to Double-A, I think we had the best overall roster in the league that year. Jackson Holliday for 2 months, Samuel Basayo for a little bit over a month throughout the season, Dylan Beavers, Judd Fabian, some other big names. It was just incredible. So I think I did a good job in the moment appreciating how fun that team was and how many future big leaguers would be on that team. And it's cool because I'm getting to know these guys before they're household names everywhere. Jackson Holliday may be a little bit of an exception. Everybody knew who he was, number one pick. Dad played in the big leagues. But Samuel Basayo, for example, not too many people knew about him when he was in Aberdeen, absolutely tearing it up. So I've got home run calls from Samuel Basayo and High A that I'm going to have forever that,
Nice.
will mean a lot to me. And it's before people knew how good this kid was. I see posts on Twitter all the time, people like just amazed at what Samuel Basayo is doing. I'm like, this doesn't surprise me at all. I saw him doing it 2 years ago when he was 19 years old. So it's pretty cool, seeing it from that perspective and knowing like there's a lot of future big leaguers here. but I'm getting to see them now and get to know them on a personal basis, from the jump.
So there's a couple of prospects that we'll maybe ask you to expand on that you'll have seen some of and hopefully maybe a bit more of. Vance Honeycutt and Braxton Bragg, you've seen much of them, and what's your kind of hopes or thoughts on those guys coming through?
Yeah, I've seen both of them this year. Vance more than Braxton because Bragg, he was in high A to start the year
Straight up.
and was gone in less than a month. It was a really quick move to Double A. He was ready for it though, and from what I saw in just a short sample size, he looks like a future big league pitcher for a couple of reasons. One, the fastball velocity has increased considerably from last year to this year, and his breaking stuff is electric. Like he's got some serious movement on the secondary pitches, the off-speed pitches, and he's just really efficient out on the mound. He works fast, and he's not wasting pitches out of the zone, trying to nibble around the corners. So I think he'll pitch in the big leagues at some point. I don't know in what capacity. I'm not saying he's going to be a Cy Young winner, but I think he will pitch in some capacity in the major leagues. And then Vance Honeycutt, really fun player, dynamic skill set. He's still trying to put it all together and figure some things out at the plate. But he's one of the best defensive outfielders I've ever seen. He runs the bases incredibly well, so he impacts the game in so many ways, even without his bat. But with what he did at UNC, one of the best players in the school's history, arguably the best with what he did both offensively and defensively, he's going to be a good player. He's just really fun to watch, and he's a great athlete.
More prospects that you've already mentioned, Samuel Basayo, but another one, Dylan Beavers. The pair of them are looking like they are going to be the next ones to be called up to the big leagues. But what were they like at Aberdeen? I know you've mentioned Basayo, should probably just focus on Beavers, but any favourite moments? And do you think these guys are going to make it and have a good career in the big leagues? And also, what makes these guys different to the other players that are down on the farm, and like the work ethic, and what are they doing day to day to just constantly be ahead of the game and just striving for improvements?
I think Samuel Basayo is going to be an absolute star in the big leagues. When he was in high A a couple of years ago, I started telling people that I saw Yordan Alvarez level power out of him. Like that's how much power is in his bat, and it's like we're talking raw power. Like he's just recently not a teenager anymore. As he continues to get stronger and older, maybe he's not even done growing, but even if he is done growing height wise, he can still put on some more muscle and size as he goes, and that's only going to make him stronger, and he's going to hit more home runs. So like I see Yordan Alvarez potential in the bat. And one thing I also always say is that it doesn't matter where you put him defensively, whether it's behind the plate or at first base, or maybe you don't even give him a glove and say, just be our DH. Like he's going to hit enough to produce where you're never going to worry about him defensively in the field or if he is only a DH. There are a lot of players that get to the big league level and you hear like, oh, this guy doesn't have a position. Where's he going to play? It's not going to be an issue for Basayo because the offensive production will so greatly outweigh anything he could contribute defensively that they're not going to worry about is he the catcher, is he a first baseman, is he a DH. So I'm excited about him. Dylan Beavers, there was a moment in Aberdeen in 2023, like the first half of the season, he just wasn't hitting well. A lot of swing and miss, kind of swinging at pitches out of the zone. And when he would make contact, it wasn't that hard contact. He'd kind of slice some looping line drives into left center field or get some base hits up the middle here and there. But then all of a sudden, in the middle of the season, something clicked, and he went on this 1.5, 2-month tear where he was the best player in the entire league, hitting the ball hard, not always home runs, but extra base hits, and doing everything you want from him offensively and also contributing defensively. But aside from the offensive production and what he did on the field, I think the cool moment that I had with Dylan was he and Max Wagner joined me for an episode of All Mic'd Up, my on-camera interview series that I do with players and coaches. And at the end of the episode, I had Dylan and Max both try one of my mom's homemade cookie bars. She had just been in town earlier that week to visit, and she brought her homemade cookie bars. That's like her famous thing. And I let them try them on air during the interview and like give them a rating and react to that. And they both said they were awesome. Max gave them a 9.9. Dylan said 10 out of 10. That they were the best he ever had. And after that is when Dylan had like a week and a half stretch where he wasn't hitting the ball well. But then the next 2 weeks after he tried my mom's cookies, he went on an absolute tear. And I put the numbers of like, this is what happened the week or two before he tried my mom's cookies, and this is what happened the 2 weeks after. And I put them up in a graphic, and we had them on the scoreboard during one of our pregame shows at the ballpark. And I said, like, this is what happened pre-cookies and post-cookies. So that was really cool. And he's the next day, he was like, yeah, man, I was looking for you. I was looking over to you when you did that segment. But then the next time my mom was in town, she brought me some more cookies. And I left a couple for Dylan under his glove in the dugout. And he's like, are these for me? And I'm like, yeah, man. Like, that's like, that's your, that's the extra, hit source right there is the homemade cookies. So I'll always be excited that that unfolded and like that was a thing.
Okay. Get
Does,
that out there. Yeah.
Does your mum post those internationally? Can we get
I
a few
think,
shipped
I think
across?
we can make it work, and we might have but we can probably make it work.
And Michael, in terms of calling a game, I can tell you've got a passion for it. Do you ever go back and listen to your games and try and improve, or what do you focus on if you go to that level of detail with it?
Yes, I do that a lot, actually. I'm glad you asked me about that because that's probably been the way that I've improved the most over the years. Like in terms of self-analysis, that's been the most effective way for me to improve. Like I take a bunch of advice and I'll get some feedback from other people on my broadcast work. But in terms of doing my own self-analysis and finding ways to get better on my own, going back and listening, like that is big for me. Even if it's just a couple clips from the night. Sometimes I'll sit and maybe listen to an at-bat or two, and other times I'll have the time and I'll sit and listen to a whole inning or two. But it varies based on the day and how much time I have in season. But that's one of the big ways that I get better is self-analysis, listening to myself and saying, oh, I was really good in this sequence. Like I did a great job describing the play that unfolded or did a good job telling this story. Other times I'm like, oh, I could get better here, here, and here. And, this is how I can do it. And I, make some notes, whether it's a mental note or write it down and say, like, this is what I want to focus on and get better at, like this series and then the next series. So I do a lot of that going back and watching and listening to the broadcast, just like a player would go back and watch the film of his at-bats or if it's a pitcher, what he does on the mound. Like I'm going to go back and listen to how I sound.
Excellent.
And how do you find the dynamic of calling games solo or calling games with partners or guests? What's your sort of preference in that as well?
It's 100% more of a challenge to call a game solo, especially a baseball game, because there's no clock with the actual game itself. You've got the pitch clock, I get that, but there's no actual game clock. And you can have a game that's done in 2 hours flat and you didn't need any extra stuff to talk about, or a game could go 4 hours and just absolutely drags on. So I've got to be prepared with all that, especially if it's a solo game. I like calling games with somebody else on air with me, not just because it's a little bit easier and I get a little bit of a breath. I can take a breath every once in a while and I don't have to talk as much, but it's just a more enjoyable broadcast for everybody when I've got somebody to go back and forth with. And mixing in stats and stories and also conversation, it just flows better and it's more fun. But I like the fact that I can do both. Like in Aberdeen, I have a lot of creative freedom for what I do with the broadcast. I bring on a bunch of different guests throughout the season. It's something that I started to do last year, and I had somebody on air with me probably for about half of our home games. But it's a good mix. Like I'll have anywhere between 2 and 3 guests a week, and then the other 2 or 3 games I'll do solo. And it's a good back and forth. Like it tests me as a broadcaster. One night, if I've got a guest on, all right, how do I adapt to this person as my color commentator, and how do I mix in questions for them and leave room for them to analyze plays, but also still do my job as the play-by-play broadcaster. And then When it's just me solo, that tests me like, okay, how much prep do I have done? How many different things can I talk about on air and keep the convo going myself the entire game? So I like doing both. I like when I can kind of bounce back and forth. One night I have a guest, the other night it's just me, then another guest, and kind of go like that. But it's definitely harder to call a game solo, especially baseball.
On on the subject of play calling, just a bit of a fun one. What would you say is your favourite play called by another commentator? Like, so obviously, there's for me the most recent one, the one that stands out will probably be Lamar Jackson's run against the Bengals, and he's like, he's Houdini, he's broke his ankles. Like, or obviously you go back to Red Sox Yankees, and we'll see you tomorrow night. What is your growing up or one that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, there's now that you asked that question, there's three that popped into my head. So one is the final out of the 2008 World Series, Harry Callis's call when Brad Lidge struck out Eric Hinsky with a slider, and then Lidge and Carlos Ruiz hugged in front of the mound. I mean, I'll always remember that, like word for word. Another one that stands out, just like as me as a broadcaster appreciating another really good broadcaster's call. So in the 2011 World Series, Game 6, when David Freese hit the walk-off home run to center for the Cardinals and Joe Buck was on the call for Fox, he used the same call that his dad did that sent a game to a Game 7 of a World Series a bunch of years prior. And just like from a baseball fan perspective, a broadcaster perspective, and just somebody who appreciates like a wholesome moment like that, I thought that was so cool that in the moment, like it was a perfect moment for him to use that call and replicate his dad's call in the same situation. So I just like from a wholesome, like, empathetic perspective, that was awesome. I mean, that's incredible. Like definitely an emotional call for him to do that. His father had already passed away. He gets to make that call doing the same thing. So that, I mean, that's incredible. I'll never forget that. And then just recently, last year in the World Series, when Joe Davis, the voice of the Dodgers, who was calling the game for Fox as a neutral broadcaster, but when Freddie Freeman hit that walk-off homer in Game 1, Gibby meet Freddie. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that's three words right there. Gibby meet Freddie. It was just so electric. And it's like my friends and I'll joke back and forth every once in a while, like, and we'll say like different announcer calls over the years. Like we always, when we're playing basketball or playing video games, it's always Mike Breen, bang, blocked by James, or at Ray Allen from deep, like, those like crazy, like big calls from years past. But now we always say like Gibby meet Freddie if it's like a big situation. So those are three big ones for me.
And in terms of your work in the minor leagues, who's the most entertaining personality you can think of that you've worked with or interviewed down there?
Oh man, that's tough. Like there are not a lot of questions that stump me. That one's got me stumped because there are a lot of good personalities in the Orioles organization, guys that I've met in Aberdeen. Not necessarily ones that completely stand out over another guy, but one guy that I've noticed this year, like really brings good vibes, is Angel Tejada. He's not necessarily a top-ranked prospect in the organization. Most people, unless you've watched an Ironbirds game or a Delmarva Shorebirds game in Low A, probably don't know the name. He's kind of a utility player in the organization. Not necessarily one of our regular starters either. But that dude brings incredible vibes. He is a really fun guy to be around. He doesn't speak very much English. I speak a little bit of Spanish, so I try my best to communicate with him in Spanish, and my Spanish has gotten better because of that. And I know he appreciates me trying, and we'll message back and forth on Instagram in Spanish because I can usually type and write in Spanish a little bit easier than speaking it back and forth. But he brings just incredible vibes. He'll be down during batting practice, dancing and singing to the Latino music that they've got blasting. So he definitely brings some great vibes. There are some other guys that I know, like just from talking to players in Aberdeen over the years. I said, like, who's the clubhouse DJ? Who's getting the aux cord after a big win, and who's firing the boys up, and who's like your favorite teammate, funniest guy to be around. And he's not in the organization anymore, but his name's Jake Lyons. He was a right-handed pitcher with us for a couple of years. So shout out to Big Car, Big Cat, Jake Lyons. I know a lot of people loved being his teammate because of the energy he brought every day.
Yeah, you need these guys. I mean, with Ryan McKenna did about 3 seasons as a vibes guy in Baltimore. So he was fun to watch, certainly.
Every team needs a vibes guy, and it could be you can be a vibes guy and still be a star, but a lot of times it's kind of not the star of the team and just a role player. But every team needs one or two of those guys.
Yep.
And moving on to stadiums, a couple of questions. So one is, what is your favourite minor league stadium? And the other is, have you got any bucket list stadiums that you'd like to call a game at one day?
Yeah, so favorite minor league stadium, I haven't been to as many as I would have liked to by now in my career, just because, like with Aberdeen, I don't go on the road. I'm just calling home games. So I only call games from Aberdeen every year. That's a great ballpark, but my favorite minor league ballpark that I've been to, and I have called games here before. This was back in 2019 when I was working in the Eastern League Double A. I was with the Pirates Double A affiliate, the Altoona Curve. But my favorite minor league ballpark is the Reading Fightin' Phils ballpark, the Phillies AA squad in Reading, PA. There's just something about that ballpark. It's a great family feel atmosphere, and it's an older park. It's been around forever. They are making a lot of new upgrades, which is great. But just like the atmosphere in the ballpark is great. Just good vibes. And when you go down on the concourse, kind of behind home plate, where the snack stands are and the bathrooms and all that, lined up and down the walls throughout the entire concourse are pictures and posters and plaques from guys that played for Reading over the years and, of course, got to the big leagues with the Phillies. A lot of guys that I grew up idolizing, like Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, Cole Hamels, Carlos Ruiz, Pat Burrell, guys like that. So it's just so cool to see the baseball history littered throughout that ballpark. It's just really fun. And then they have a pool in deep right field, which is
Nice.
also really cool. So I love everything about that ballpark and the feel for it. And then so your next question, bucket list ballparks that I'd like to call a game at. Of course, any big league stadium that I'm actually getting paid to call a game for a team, yes, 100%. But I would love to call a game from Petco Park in San Diego. I mean, that environment looks awesome. And like I told you earlier in this interview, I love the beach. Any ballpark by a beach, like that's my two favorite things, baseball on the beach. But that looks like a really fun atmosphere, and great weather out there. I think I'd probably put Petco Park number one on my MLB bucket list, but also Citizens Bank Park because I grew up a Phillies fan, for sure. Outside of Major League Baseball, I would love to call a game from the Tokyo Dome in Japan. I mean, I don't have necessarily any connections to Japanese baseball. Like I've never been there, anything like that. But that environment just looks insane. So if there's somehow some way I could call a game there someday, I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of our bucket list would be obviously Oriole Park, Camden Yards, but I think I've always the soft spot for the Giants Stadium. I think just the history and regardless of what people think of him and the Balco scandal, but the historic Barry Bonds home run, I just think I need to go there and feel the history.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, if I could add one more, I'd probably say Yankee Stadium for one specific reason. I was a huge Derek Jeter fan growing up. Still am. I still follow what he's doing post playing career, and I think he's a great TV analyst as well. But he was my favorite player growing up. So the new Yankee Stadium, they kind of refer to it as the house that Jeter built. Like the old Yankee Stadium was the house that Babe Ruth built, and some people say that this is the house that Jeter built because he got to play in it for his final few seasons. They won a World Series there, his last one. So just because I was such a huge Jeter fan during his career, I think it would be cool to call a game from the house that Jeter built.
In a sport that is dominated by scouting reports, and roster decisions are made of scouting reports, draft decisions are made of scouting reports. If you had to give yourself a scouting report as a broadcaster, what would it say?
Ooh, good question. I've never been asked that. So. Scouts use that 20 to 80 scale, and with 80 being like the elite of elite, like it's really hard to get a scout to throw you up an 80 grade on something. But I think I've got a 70 grade at least, with connecting to my audience. I think that's one thing that I have really worked hard on since I got to Aberdeen, specifically from 2023 through this year and beyond, is having the perspective on who's tuning into my broadcasts every game. In minor league baseball, it's so different than big league baseball. Like the minor leagues, it's a niche audience where the main viewers and listeners are people from that area, local to Aberdeen or the surrounding areas, that have been Ironbirds fans and been going to the games for years. So that's one big part of the audience, but also players, families, and friends. So parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, siblings, wives and girlfriends. I think it's really important to not cater the entire broadcast towards those demographics, but a lot of it. So I really try to have a good feel for who's listening and keep that in perspective. And because of that, my broadcasts have gotten better because I've really made an effort to do more interviews that I play on my pregame shows, but also from those interviews, get to know these guys and get talking points and learn who they are as people and not just as athletes and baseball players. And then I deliver those stories on my broadcast. A guy's coming up to the plate. I don't need to tell you what his OPS is or how many home runs he has or what year he was drafted every time he comes to the plate. I want to mix in different stories about that guy's time playing high school baseball, college baseball, what it was like for him to get drafted, some of his big role models and who he's closest to in his life off the field, what he likes to do when he's not at the baseball field. Like I really want to tell these guys stories and show that there's more to just the stats on the back of their baseball card or on their baseball reference page and things like that. So I think I've got a 70 grade at least with kind of feel for my audience and also like storytelling and kind of the human interest side of the game. But I'd also say that I've gotten a lot better over the last couple of years at kind of commanding the broadcast. Where if a big moment happens, like I capture that with you can hear it in my voice, the voice inflection, the energy, and I want people to know how much fun I'm having, and I want them to be able to easily tell how much fun I'm having on a broadcast. So I think I'd give myself at least a 60 on the 20 to 80 scale with that, and yeah, I mean, just like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love it. Like I said earlier in this interview, we're not making a lot of money in the minor leagues. It's long hours. It's, we miss a lot of things in our personal lives because of this grind working in professional baseball. So I wouldn't be here if I didn't absolutely love it. So, I almost want people to know that and know that, like, if somebody was scouting my broadcast, I think that they would take that away.
Excellent.
So, if you had a baseball savant, would your expected numbers all be in the red? Then is that what you're saying?
I would like to think that for everything that's mentioned in that ongoing answer, that I'd be in the red for sure.
Excellent.
We'll take that. Yeah.
So obviously, we can tell your passion, you care. So we've got a couple of points on, like, state of the game, and just get your thoughts on these. Do you think that the game should and will embrace automatic balls and strikes? It seems to be coming in, but slowly. And do you foresee any unintended consequences from this in terms of how pitching develops and possibly how pitchers develop in the minor leagues and the lower levels before they get to the ABS technology ballparks?
So yes, I think everyone needs to embrace the automatic ball strike system. I think it's going to be great for the game. I don't think that there's going to be many, if at all, negative consequences from it. It's not. I think it's great because it's not going to replace umpires. It's just going to help umpires who miss a call here and there in a big moment make sure everybody gets it right. It's also not going to take away from catchers learning how to frame pitches and all that. Because, there'll be a time where a catcher looks like he steals a strike, then somebody challenges it, and it turns out, well, he actually, whatever work he did is overturned by the ABS system. Like, but you can't challenge every pitch. Like, there's going to be hundreds of pitches throughout a baseball game, over 200, sometimes over 300 pitches in a game. The catchers are still going to need to learn how to frame and steal strikes because that's going to be important. So I don't think it takes away from any of that. But I was in the Arizona Fall League working as a communications coordinator and broadcaster for MLB this past fall, and they put the ABS in the Fall League, and it was great because one, it all happens so fast. If a batter, a catcher, or a pitcher wants to challenge the call and thinks a strike was a ball or a ball was a strike, immediately they tap their head. The umpire immediately says the catcher, the pitcher, the batter is challenging the call on the field. It goes up on the scoreboard. Right away, we see if it's a ball or a strike. The umpire says whether the call's confirmed or overturned, and then you go back to playing. It takes no more than 10 to 15 seconds to do all of that. And it's great because fans can see it happening in real time. There's no like, oh, somebody else is going to look at it and tell the umpire in his or her ear what the call is. We can all see it on the screen. So there's transparency, it's fast, and it's only going to help the game in big moments because you don't want a World Series game or a playoff game or even a lot of times a regular season game that means something decided because of a missed call on a ball or strike. So it just helps everybody know that the right call is going to be made in the big moments. And I think it's going to be great. But they will actually at some point have to figure out how many challenges should you get. If you keep getting them right, how long should you continue to retain those? How late in the game can you use them? Things like that. But I think it's all positives.
Yeah, I think the challenge system is better than just a full automatic system because you do keep that kind of craft of calling a game and try and have that deception with the umpire and the batter, obviously.
Right. I don't think you need a completely automated strike zone where the umpire's just getting the call in their ear and then they make it. I think you can still let the umpires call balls and strikes, but bring the challenge system in to get the few that they miss correct.
Are there any, if you could sort of pluck a single rule out, realistic or not, or a new change, is there anything you'd really like to see in the future be implemented?
Yeah, I don't know about taking a rule out, but there is one rule that I definitely want to add to Major League Baseball. I was actually just talking about this with my dad the other day. We're both huge baseball fans. We talk ball all the time. And we've both agreed for years that Major League Baseball should have a catcher reentry rule. Catcher is one of the toughest positions on the field, and a lot of times teams will only carry 2 catchers on their roster. It's pretty standard. Some teams have 3 and you have more flexibility, but most teams only carry 2 catchers or 2 guys that you're comfortable throwing behind the dish. And because of that, whoever starts the game behind the dish, they really don't want to have to use the backup catcher, not necessarily replacing the starter with the backup, but like a lot of times that backup catcher will be left on the bench when he could have been used as a pinch hitter in a situation or come into the game and help the team try to win a ball game. But a lot of times managers are afraid to use their backup catcher because if you use the backup and then the starter gets hurt, or if that backup then gets hurt, you've only got one catcher the rest of the game and you've got nobody behind them that should be back there. I think that it would help baseball out if there was a catcher reentry rule because you could use that backup catcher to pinch hit for your second baseman who's in a 1-for-20 slump in the 8th inning. Then he stays in the game, but you won't have to worry about only being stuck with one catcher later because if a catcher comes out, you can bring him back in case of an injury. So I would only do it in case of an injury. And I know there's the thing of, could somebody be faking an injury to get the starter back in, like things like that. But I don't think that's an issue. I think it's more so for safety. I think a catcher reentry rule would really benefit the big leagues.
Yes, I could certainly get on board with that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think the one that I personally would get rid of, and it hasn't been in the game too long, is a runner on second during extra innings. I think it gives. I mean, I haven't really looked into the stats of it, and I probably should have before I go and make this statement. However, I'm still going to go and make this statement. I think having a runner on second during extras gives an advantage to the team at the top of the inning.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, both teams obviously get the same scenario, but as the visiting team, you can gain so much momentum if you bring in a couple runs right away and then the home team's a little bit deflated. So I get what you're saying there. I love it as a broadcaster. I mean, look, it's a grind in this industry. If you're here in Game 5, game homestand, and you're playing in the 14th inning. Nobody needs that. Like, it's great if a game ends in 10. We've got more action, but I look at it like hockey. Like, they in the regular season, the NHL, they're shootouts. If a game isn't decided after the first overtime, I think that's what it is. But either way, like, there's no shootouts in the playoffs for obvious reasons. You just keep playing overtimes until it's over. But it's the same thing in baseball. You've got the runner on second rule in the regular season. You don't have it in the postseason. So those big games are still getting decided the organic way, I guess you can say. But I think over the course of 162, man, like, throw that guy out there. Honestly, two guys on.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Right. We'll go on. We've got a quiz of minor league teams. So I've got 5 minor league teams and I've got 5 major league teams, and we're looking for the affiliates. I think this might be quite easy for you, but we'll see how you get on. So we'll give you the minor league team first and then give us the big league team. So the Hickory Crawdads.
The Hickory Crawdads are the low A affiliate of the Texas Rangers.
Well done. Now I've given myself some pronunciation issues here. The Amarillo Sod Poodles.
The Amarillo Sod Poodles, that's Diamondbacks AA.
Correct.
Can I interject what minor league team name that is, by the way?
Well, I chose some of these because they are absolutely brilliant names, and the names are very underrated. So the third one is the Eugene Emeralds.
Oh, the Eugene Emeralds. Ooh. I want to say that they are high A. It's either high A or low A. Wow, Eugene, Oregon. I think that's high A Giants.
It's definitely the Giants. I've not got the letters in front, but yeah, you're definitely the Giants. You're right there, and then my screen's going off. So the fourth one, the Greensboro Grasshoppers.
Okay, they're in our league. They are the high A affiliate of the Pirates.
And then the Lake Elsinore Storm.
Lake Elsinore Storm. Ooh, that's another one out in California. That's the California League. That's low A out there. I think Lake Elsinore. Oh, man. Wow, I think I'm going to get this one wrong. I'm going to go with the Padres.
Padres is right. Well done.
Oh, I got it right. Let's go.
Nice.
Wait, so Eugene was definitely Giants, and that's definitely, I think that's high A. So I got that one right too.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, hey guys, thank you all so much for having me on. Grant, Thomas, Matt. Extra shout out to Matt because he's got the Aberdeen Ironbirds hat on. But I really appreciate all you guys. Thanks for reaching out on Twitter, X. It was really cool doing this podcast. Love connecting with people across the world through baseball, and getting to make some friends across the pond is pretty cool. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we'll shout up next time we're across.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael.
If you ever find yourself in the States, I got you with some free tickets to a game.
Nice. That's what we like to hear. Thank you.
I do think there's a few planning on going up. I think one of our other hosts, Andy, he couldn't make it. I know he's in Baltimore, July, and then I think I might be trying to get over in September for the Yankees series.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, let me know when you're in the States. Like, I mean, I'm either, in Maryland or the Philadelphia area. I'm not too far. So, could always try to link up with where you are.
Yeah.
One last one before you go. Obviously, I went to Philly in 2023.
Okay.
I obviously experienced the magic and wonder of a Philly cheesesteak. However, I only went to Geno's. Where is the best Philly cheesesteak?
Everyone that I've talked to says that Angelo's is the best. They've got fantastic pizza too, from what I hear. I have not been. I'm trying to cross that off my list pretty soon. But not a consensus, but close to it. Everyone says that Angelo's is number one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. And once again, thanks for your time. And if you ever want to come on again, if in a couple of months' time, or we can discuss prospects maybe after the draft.
Absolutely, yeah. Would definitely be willing to do it again and then talk baseball. This was a lot of fun. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Cool.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye now.
See you guys.
That's it for this episode of O's Across the Pond, bringing Birdland to Europe one episode at a time. Be sure to subscribe, share and follow along as we keep the Orioles conversation going from this side of the Atlantic. Until next time, stay loud, stay proud and let's go O's!